You feel it again, that flutter in your chest when their name appears on your screen after 3 days of silence. Your pulse quickens, your stomach tightens. The world sharpens into focus. You tell yourself, this is what love feels like, this electricity, this urgency, this feeling that you might shatter if you don't hear from them soon. But what if I told you that sensation, that trembling you've learned to call chemistry, is not the biology of love at all? What if it's the body's ancient alarm system screaming danger in a language you've mistranslated as desire? You grew up believing love should hurt a little, that it should keep you awake at night, analyzing every word, every pause, every shift in tone. You learned that affection is something you chase, something you earn through perfect behavior, something that arrives unpredictably like weather. A partner who is steady, who is kind without condition, who responds to your messages within hours instead of days. This person makes you feel nothing, worse than nothing. They make your skin crawl with a sensation you can't name, a wrongness that lives in your bones. You swipe left on green flags. You are drawn again and again to the ones who are distant, the ones whose love you have to decode from breadcrumbs, the ones who make you feel like you're solving a puzzle where the prize is being allowed to exist in their presence without punishment. There is a name for what happens when someone is cold for days and then suddenly warm for an hour. There is a name for the high you feel when the person who has been ignoring you finally sends a message that says they miss you. There is a name for why you cannot leave someone who makes you cry more often than they make you laugh. Trauma bonding. The term sounds clinical, distant, like something that happens to other people, but it is happening to you. It has been happening since before you had words for what love was supposed to mean. You are not stupid. You are not weak. You are not choosing pain because something is wrong with your judgment. You are following a map that was drawn in your nervous system when you were too young to know maps could be redrawn. You learned that love and fear share the same address, that to be cared for, you must first be afraid. That affection is the reward that comes after you have been punished and forgiven in an endless loop that feels more like home than peace ever could. The question is not why you stay. The question is why your body believes this is what staying alive requires. There is a child still living inside your cells who learned that the person who scared them was also the only person who could make the fear stop. A child who had nowhere else to go when the storm came, because the storm and the shelter were the same pair of hands. That child is still waiting for the next reprieve, still calibrating their behavior to avoid the next eruption, still hoping that if they are good enough, small enough, quiet enough, the love will come, without the cost. You do not remember making this decision. You do not remember the day your brain began to encode inconsistency as intimacy, but the pattern is there, written in the way you hold your breath when you send a text, written in the way you apologize for things that are not your fault, written in the way you feel most alive when you are most afraid of losing someone. This is not a moral failing. This is neuroscience. This is what happens when a developing brain must solve an impossible equation. The person I need to run toward for safety is the person I need to run away from to survive. The answer the brain arrives at is not logic. It is adaptation. It is a strategy that kept you breathing when you were small and powerless, and now it is keeping you trapped in relationships that require you to stay small and powerless to keep the peace. You have been taught to mistake anxiety for passion, to interpret the feeling of walking on eggshells as the sensation of being deeply connected, to believe that if love does not cost you your peace of mind, it is not real love at all. But here is the truth that no one tells you when you are young and learning what it means to be attached to another human being. Love is not supposed to feel like waiting for a verdict. It is not supposed to turn your body into a hostage negotiation between the part that wants to stay and the part that knows you should leave. You are not broken for wanting what hurts you. You are wired for it, and the wiring can be changed. When people ask why you don't just leave, they are asking the wrong question. They are speaking from a nervous system that was allowed to learn the difference between safety and danger, between love and control, between someone having a bad day and someone using their bad day as permission to make you disappear. Your nervous system learned something else entirely. You learned loyalty before you learned boundaries. You learned to see potential instead of pattern. You learned that if you could just love someone hard enough, consistently enough, selflessly enough, they would transform. The anger would soften. The coldness would thaw. The monster would remember it was human and choose to be kind. This is not stupidity. This is the logic of a child who needed their parent to be good. Because if their parent was not good, then the world was not safe, and a child cannot survive in a world that is not safe. So you made your parent good in your mind. You made their violence your fault. You made their neglect your responsibility to fix. And when you could not fix it, when the love still came with conditions and the conditions kept changing, you did not blame them. You blamed yourself for not being enough. That child is still inside you, still trying to earn love by being perfect. Still believing that somewhere in the geometry of your behavior lies the formula that will make someone stay without hurting you first. Still convinced that you can control someone else's capacity for gentleness by controlling yourself into smallness. The truth is simpler and more devastating. You are loyal to people who have not earned it, because you are practicing the loyalty you wish had been given to you. When you stay with someone who is cruel one day and tender the next, you are not being weak. You are being faithful to the version of them that smiled at you last Tuesday. You are holding vigil for the person they were in that one conversation, when they listened, when they held you, when they made you feel like you were not too much or too little, but exactly right. You are waiting for that person to come back. You do not yet understand that the cruelty and the tenderness come from the same source, that they are not two different people trapped in one body, but one person who has learned they can keep you by never letting you settle into certainty. This is what they do not tell you about trauma bonding. It is as biochemically real as any addiction. When the person who has been cold to you for days suddenly reaches for your hand, your brain releases a flood of dopamine so potent it could light up a scan. The relief is not metaphorical, it is molecular. Your body is getting exactly what it was deprived of, and the deprivation makes the reward unbearably sweet. You are not addicted to the pain. You are addicted to the relief that follows the pain. You are addicted to the moment the storm passes and the sun comes out, and you are told implicitly or explicitly that you have been forgiven for existing in a way that required punishment. This is why people who have never lived it cannot understand. They think you are choosing chaos. They do not realize chaos is where your nervous system feels most at home. They do not realize that peace makes you panic, because peace means you have let your guard down, and letting your guard down is when the blow usually comes. So you choose people who keep you vigilant. You choose people whose love requires constant maintenance, constant vigilance, constant proof. You choose people who feel like a job you can never complete, because completion would mean rest, and rest would mean vulnerability, and vulnerability would mean annihilation. You have never been loved in stillness. You have only been loved in motion, in apology, in the frantic energy of trying to repair what you did not break. And somewhere along the way, you began to believe that this is what it means to matter to someone. That love is measured by how much you are willing to endure. That the depth of your feeling is proven by the depth of your suffering. But there is another way to see this. You are not weak for staying. You are unbearably strong. The same capacity for loyalty that keeps you tied to people who hurt you is the same capacity that makes you capable of profound love. You do not need to destroy this part of yourself. You need to redirect it. You need to learn to give it to people who will not mistake your devotion for permission to disappear and return as they please. The loyalty is not the problem. The target is. You were never supposed to learn that love is something you survive. You were supposed to learn that love is something that helps you survive everything else. But the wires got crossed, the definitions got tangled, and now you stand in the wreckage of another failed relationship, wondering what is wrong with you, when the question should be, what was done to you that made this feel normal? There is a moment that happens in every childhood, a moment so small it leaves no memory, only an imprint. You are afraid. You are 2, maybe 3 years old, and something has frightened you. A loud noise, a dark room, a nightmare still clinging to your skin, and every cell in your body knows exactly what to do. Run to the person who keeps you safe. Run to the arms that are supposed to catch you. But what happens when those arms are also the source of the fear? What happens when the person you run toward is the same person you need to run from? What happens when your father's voice is both the lullaby and the thunderstorm? When your mother's hands are both the comfort and the strike? Your brain is faced with an impossible contradiction. The limbic system, the ancient part of your mind that governs survival, sends 2 commands simultaneously. Flee, attach, get away, get closer, danger, safety. And these 2 signals fire at the same time, in the same direction, toward the same person. This is not something a child's mind can resolve with logic. So, it resolves it with adaptation. It learns to approach with hesitation, to need with terror, To love with the knowledge that love might turn on you at any moment, without warning, without reason, without anything you can predict or control. This is called disorganized attachment. It is what happens when your first template for love is written in contradictions. When safety and fear become so entangled in your neural pathways that you cannot experience one without expecting the other. You grow up. You leave that house. But the template remains. And now you are 25, 30, 40 years old, and you are still moving toward people with that same strange dance. Come close, push away, need you, fear you. The person who is kind and steady does not activate this template. They do not feel familiar. So your nervous system labels them boring labels, them wrong, labels them with a visceral sense of repulsion you cannot explain, because it is not happening in the part of your brain that speaks in words. But the person who is inconsistent, the person who is sometimes warm and sometimes ice, the person whose love you have to earn and re-earn and earn again, they feel like home. And there is a reason for this that goes deeper than attachment style, deeper than pattern recognition. There is a biochemical reason why you cannot let go of the person who only loves you intermittently. Imagine a laboratory, a small box, a rat, a lever. Every time the rat presses the lever, food appears. The rat learns quickly. Press lever, receive food. The dopamine reward is predictable. The rat presses when hungry and stops when full. The behavior is stable, controllable, easy to extinguish if the food stops coming. Now, imagine a different box, a different rat, same lever, but this time the food comes randomly. Sometimes pressing the lever produces nothing. Sometimes it produces a feast. Sometimes it comes after one press. Sometimes after 50. The rat has no way to predict when the reward will arrive. This rat becomes obsessed. This rat will press the lever hundreds of times, thousands of times, even when no food comes. Even when the food stops coming entirely, this rat will keep pressing longer, harder, more desperately than the rat who was fed consistently. The behavior is almost impossible to extinguish. This is called intermittent reinforcement, and it is the most powerful conditioning mechanism known to psychology. This is what was done to you. Your parent was not always cruel. If they had been, you would have learned to expect cruelty to defend against it, perhaps even to detach from it emotionally. But they were not consistent in their cruelty. They were unpredictable. Some days they came home and smiled at you and asked about your day, and you felt the warmth of being seen, of mattering, of being loved, without having to shrink yourself into worthiness. Other days they came home and the air changed. You said the same things, you were the same child. But this time, your words were met with rage, with silence, with a coldness that made you feel like you were disappearing, and you had no way to know which version of them would walk through the door. So you became the rat. You kept performing, kept trying, kept pressing the lever of good behavior, hoping that this time, this attempt, this perfect sentence or perfect grade or perfect stillness would produce the food, would produce the warmth, would produce the proof that you were worth keeping. And when it came, when the coldness finally broke and they were kind again, the dopamine flood in your brain was stronger than any drug. Because you had been deprived, because you had been waiting, because the relief of finally receiving what you needed was magnified 1,000 times by the fear that you would never receive it again. You became addicted to the relief, addicted to the moment the punishment ended, addicted to the smile that came after the scream, the hug that came after the silence, the "I love you" that came after the "you're worthless." And your brain learned to associate that spike of dopamine, that rush of relief, with love itself. This is why you are drawn to people who are hot and cold. This is why the person who is consistently kind does not create that spark, that chemistry, that feeling you have named passion. Your brain is not wired to recognize steady affection as love. Your brain is wired to recognize the end of deprivation as love, the absence of pain as love, the moment the terrible waiting is over as love. You are not choosing chaos because you are broken. You are choosing chaos because chaos is the only environment in which your reward system knows how to function. And there is something else you learned in that house, something even more insidious. You learned that you had control, not over them. You could never control their moods, their anger, their capacity to love you without conditions. But you could control the story you told yourself about why they were angry. Because if you believed they were angry, because they were cruel, because they were damaged, because something was wrong with them, then you were powerless. You were a child trapped in a house with someone whose violence you could not predict or prevent. That level of powerlessness is unlivable for a developing mind. So your mind gave you a different story, a story where you had agency. It told you that they were angry because you were bad, because you were too loud, too needy, too sensitive, not good enough, not trying hard enough. And if the problem was you, then the solution was also you. If you could just be better, quieter, more perfect, you could make them stop. This is called internalizing the badness, and it is a brilliant survival mechanism for a child who has no other options. But it is a devastating blueprint for an adult trying to love and be loved. Because now, when someone treats you poorly, your first instinct is not to question their behavior. Your first instinct is to ask what you did wrong, to scan your own actions for the flaw that caused their coldness, to believe that if you can just identify your mistake and correct it, you can make them kind again. You become responsible for their emotional state. You become the manager of their moods. You shrink and apologize and adjust yourself into shapes that might fit the narrow space of their approval. And when they are finally kind to you, you do not feel relief that they have stopped being cruel. You feel gratitude. You feel like you have earned something. You feel like you have won. But you have not won. You have only survived another round of the same cycle your nervous system has been running since you were too young to know it was a cycle. And here is what no one tells you about this kind of conditioning. It changes your baseline. It changes what your body recognizes as normal. A nervous system that grew up in chaos does not know how to interpret calm. Calm feels like the moment before the explosion. Calm feels like waiting. Calm feels dangerous because your body is trained to be ready to be scanning, to be anticipating the next shift. So, when you meet someone who is peaceful, someone whose emotions are regulated, someone who does not need you to manage them, or fix them, or earn their love through suffering your nervous system panics, it labels the peace as boredom. It labels the stability as a lack of connection. It starts to create problems where there are none, starts to push and prod and test, because conflict is where you know how to exist, and peace is a language you were never taught to speak. You mistake anxiety for chemistry. You mistake the feeling of hypervigilance for the feeling of being alive. You mistake the cortisol spike of waiting for a text message for the butterflies of early love. But butterflies and fear live in the same part of the body. The sensations are almost identical: rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, a tightness in the chest. The difference is context. The difference is whether the person on the other end of that sensation is moving toward you or away from you, whether they are offering safety or threatening it. You were taught that these two things are the same. You were taught that love is the person who can hurt you, choosing sometimes not to. And now you are an adult standing in the ruins of another relationship, wondering why you keep choosing people who make you feel this way. Wondering what is wrong with you that you cannot be attracted to kindness. Wondering why every time someone is good to you, without conditions, without games, without the push and pull, you feel nothing. You feel nothing because your dopamine pathways were carved by inconsistency. Because your nervous system learned to light up, not in the presence of love, but in the presence of relief from the absence of love. This is the trap. This is the wire in your brain that needs to be carefully, patiently untangled. Because you are not choosing pain. You are choosing the familiar shape of love as you learned it. And what you learned was not love at all. There is a word you have been using wrong your entire life: chemistry. You feel it when you meet someone, and the air between you seems to hum with recognition. When their presence makes your pulse quicken and your thoughts scatter. When you cannot stop thinking about them, analyzing them, trying to decode what they want from you and whether you are giving it correctly. You call this chemistry. You call it fate. You call it a connection so deep and immediate that it must mean something. And it does mean something, but not what you think. What you are feeling is not the recognition of a soulmate. It is the recognition of a pattern. Your trauma is identifying their trauma. Your wound is speaking to their wound in a language that bypasses all conscious thought. The anxiety you feel in their presence, the walking on eggshells, the constant monitoring of their mood, the fear that you might say the wrong thing and shatter whatever fragile thing exists between you. This is not passion. This is your nervous system trying to tell you that you are in danger. But you have spent so long mistranslating this signal that you no longer hear it as a warning. You hear it as proof that this person matters, that what you have with them is rare and worth fighting for. You hear the alarm and you run toward it instead of away. Real chemistry. The kind that exists between two people who are not trying to heal their childhoods through each other feels different. It feels quieter. It does not spike your cortisol. It does not keep you awake at night, wondering if you said the wrong thing, if you are too much, if they are going to leave. Healthy love feels like exhaling. It feels like your nervous system can finally rest because it is not constantly scanning for threats. It feels like you can be yourself, your whole self, the parts that are easy and the parts that are difficult, without having to perform your worthiness. And yes, at first this kind of love might feel boring to you. It might feel like something is missing. Because what is missing is the adrenaline. What is missing is the fear. What is missing is the desperate need to earn and re-earn affection by being perfect. Your body will tell you this is not love because it does not hurt. Your body will tell you that if there is no suffering, there is no depth. Your body will create the sensation of the ick, that inexplicable repulsion towards someone who is good to you, because goodness without conditions does not match the template you carry. But that template was written by people who did not know how to love you. And you have been following it like a map to treasure, when it is actually a map back to the same pain, the same waiting, the same hope that this time will be different. You need a new definition, not just of chemistry, but of love itself. Love is not supposed to be a roller coaster. It is not supposed to swing between euphoria and despair, between feeling chosen and feeling abandoned, between the high of reconciliation and the low of wondering what you did wrong. Love is not the feeling of relief when someone stops punishing you. Love is the absence of punishment entirely. Love does not ask you to be smaller. It does not require you to monitor your words to suppress your needs to pretend that neglect is the same as giving someone space. Love does not make you feel like you are too much and not enough simultaneously. Love is not loyalty to someone's potential. It is not standing by while someone cycles through the same patterns, believing that your patience will eventually transform them into the person they were for 2 weeks at the beginning. Love is what someone does consistently, not what they promise when they are afraid you are leaving. And fear has no place in love's vocabulary. The person who loves you does not use your attachment to them as a weapon, does not withdraw affection to punish you, does not create uncertainty to keep you hooked, does not tell you that you are imagining things when your intuition is screaming that something is wrong. That is not love. That is control dressed in the language of complexity. That is someone who learned the same lessons you did about how to keep someone close by keeping them destabilized. You do not owe your loyalty to people who confuse you. You do not owe your heart to anyone who makes you earn the right to be treated gently. The truth you need to hear is this: you are not afraid of being alone. You are afraid of being still. Because stillness means there is no crisis to manage, no mood to anticipate, no version of yourself to perform. Stillness means you might have to sit with the grief of everything you accepted that you should not have accepted. Everything you called love that was only ever fear with a softer name. The hardest truth about leaving a relationship built on trauma bonding is that it will feel exactly like withdrawal from a substance your body believes it needs to survive. You will wake up in the middle of the night with your heart racing, reaching for your phone, convinced that if you just send one message, just check one more time. If they have posted anything, just see if they are thinking about you. The way you cannot stop thinking about them, the pain will ease. But it will not ease. It will only reset the clock. It will only reestablish the supply line of dopamine that your brain is desperately craving. Every time you break no contact, you are giving the rat in the box another random pellet of food. You are teaching your nervous system that if it suffers long enough, the reward will come. This is why no contact is not cruelty. It is medicine. It is the only way to break the biochemical addiction. You must cut off the supply completely and let your brain recalibrate to a baseline that does not require chaos to feel alive. And you will hate it. You will feel the absence of them like a physical wound. You will romanticize the good moments and forget the bad ones. You will convince yourself that you overreacted, that it was not that bad, that maybe if you had just been more patient, more understanding, more willing to accept the pieces of love they were capable of giving, it would have worked. This is the addiction talking. This is your brain trying to get you to go back to the source of the intermittent reward. Do not listen. Sit with the craving. Name it. Say out loud, "This is not love that I am missing. This is the relief from pain that I am missing. This is the dopamine spike that came after days of cortisol. This is my nervous system looking for a familiar pattern, not a healthy one. The craving will pass. It will come in waves, and the waves will be unbearable at first. but they will get smaller. They will come less frequently. And one day you will realize that you have not thought about them in hours, then days, then weeks. But detox is only the first step. The harder work is teaching your body what safety actually feels like. You will need to learn to sit with boredom without interpreting it as a lack of connection. You will need to practice being with people who are consistent, who do not make you guess who show up when they say they will and mean what they say. And it will feel wrong at first. It will feel too easy. Your nervous system will tell you that if you are not working for it, it is not real. Ignore this voice. This voice is the child who had to work for every scrap of affection. This voice does not know that love is not supposed to be a job with performance reviews and the constant threat of being fired. Start to notice green flags the way you used to notice red ones. Notice when someone listens without interrupting. Notice when they remember something small you said 3 weeks ago. Notice when they are upset about something and they tell you directly instead of punishing you with silence and expecting you to guess what you did wrong. Notice when you do not have to walk on eggshells. Notice when you can be tired or grumpy or need space, and it does not result in withdrawal of affection or accusations that you do not care enough. These things will not give you butterflies. They will give you something far more precious and far more difficult for you to recognize: peace. And peace will feel like nothing. It will feel beige and mild, and you will want to create drama just to feel something, just to return to the intensity you have learned to associate with mattering to someone. Do not create the drama. Sit in the peace. Let your nervous system learn that peace is not the silence before the storm. Let it learn that peace is the weather, that this is what it feels like to not be in survival mode every moment of every day. You will also need to learn to trust yourself again, because the people who loved you through fear also taught you to doubt your own perceptions. They called you too sensitive when you named their cruelty. They told you that you were overreacting when you tried to establish boundaries. They convinced you that your intuition was broken, that you could not trust your own read of a situation, that what you felt was less real than what they insisted you should feel. This is called gaslighting, and it severs you from the one navigational tool that could have kept you safe: your body's ability to tell you when something is wrong. Your body has been trying to tell you. The knot in your stomach, the tightness in your throat, the way you hold your breath when you are around certain people, the way you feel exhausted after spending time with someone, not because you did anything physically demanding, but because you spent the entire interaction monitoring their mood and adjusting yourself accordingly. These are not signs of anxiety that need to be managed. These are signals that need to be listened to. Start small. When your body says no, honor it. When someone asks you to do something and your gut clenches, do not override it with logic about how you should be more accommodating. Say no. Watch what happens. Notice if the person respects your boundary or punishes you for having one. The people who love you will not need you to betray yourself to keep them comfortable. And slowly, over months and years, you will begin to build a new template. A template where love is not something you have to survive, where kindness is not a surprise but an expectation, where you do not have to earn the right to be treated with basic respect. You will learn that you can be safe and loved at the same time, that these two things are not opposites, that fear is not proof of depth. Imagine two threads held up to the light. One is red, one is black. In a healthy mind, these threads remain separate. The red thread is love, the black thread is fear, and the two never touch. But in your mind, these threads were twisted together before you were old enough to know that threads could exist apart. Someone held them both in the same hand and taught you they were one thing. Taught you that to pull on the red thread of affection, you must also accept the black thread of terror, that they are woven together so tightly that to remove one is to lose both. And so, you have spent your life reaching for both threads at once, calling the tangle by a single name, believing that the weight of the black thread is simply the price of holding the red one. The work of healing is the work of untangling. It is slow. It is painstaking. It requires you to examine every knot, every place where fear and love have been tied together, and gently, without judgment, begin to separate them. This is what it means to learn that love does not require you to be afraid, that someone can care for you without you having to earn it through suffering, that you can be seen fully and not be punished for what is seen. It means sitting with the discomfort of being loved in your entirety, not just in the small, acceptable parts you have learned to show. It means letting someone see you, angry, tired, uncertain, flawed, and watching them stay. Not because you have performed worthiness, but because they have chosen you without the performance. It means you stop translating every act of care into a test you must pass. Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Stop believing that peace is temporary and pain is the truth beneath it. The threads can be separated. Love can exist without fear. But you must be willing to sit with how strange it feels, how exposed, how vulnerable it is to be cared for by someone who does not need you to be afraid of losing them in order to value them. You must be willing to grieve the years you spent believing the tangle was all there was, the relationships you poured yourself into hoping your loyalty would be enough to make someone stop hurting you, the parts of yourself you abandoned because they were inconvenient to the people who claimed to love you. You must grieve the child who learned to brace for impact every time they reached for affection, who learned that love and pain share the same heartbeat. And then when the grieving is done, you must begin again. You are not starting from nothing. You are starting from knowledge. You know now what you did not know before. You know the difference between the chemistry of fear and the chemistry of love. You know that the intensity you once chased was not passion, but panic. You know that your loyalty is not flawed, only misplaced. You know that the template you have been following was drawn by hands that did not know how to hold you without hurting you. And you know that you deserve more than survival, more than the relief that comes when someone stops being cruel, more than the breadcrumbs of affection scattered between long stretches of neglect. You deserve to be loved in the light, not in the shadows of someone's uncertainty, not in the gaps between their moods, not in the brief moments when they remember that you are a person with needs and not just a mirror for their own unresolved pain. You deserve a love that does not ask you to shrink, a love that does not require you to manage someone else's emotions at the expense of your own, a love that sees your boundaries not as rejection, but as information about how to care for you better. You deserve to feel safe enough to rest, to put down the hypervigilance you have carried since childhood, to stop scanning every conversation for hidden meanings, to stop bracing for the moment when kindness will curdle into punishment. This kind of love exists. It will not announce itself with fireworks. It will not sweep you off your feet or make your heart race with the fear of losing it. It will feel at first like nothing at all, like breathing, like coming home to a house where no one is angry, where the air is calm, where you do not have to perform or prepare or protect yourself. And you will have to learn to stay in that house even when your instincts tell you to run. Even when the quiet feels like a void you need to fill with crisis. Even when your nervous system mistakes peace for danger. You will have to choose it every day. Choose the person who is steady over the person who is exciting. Choose the relationship that builds slowly over the one that ignites fast and burns you. Choose yourself finally after all these years of choosing everyone else. The threads are separating, slowly. One knot at a time, love is red, fear is black, and they were never meant to be the same color. You are learning to see the difference, and that is where freedom begins.